Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I'm Dr. Britt, and I'm an interim dean of professional studies and applied sciences. And on behalf of the Title IX 50th anniversary celebration, we, Dr. Brammer and I, were charged with creating an educational series related to the history of Title IX. And so many of you attended Dr. Joe's presentation last semester, and we are here to provide another opportunity for you. This is actually part of the Graves Lecture Series. So traditionally, it happened in the Sandoz Center, and it was usually Tuesday or Thursday nights at 7 p.m. And we were really honored that Sean Hartman was able to allow us into that. And so we could kind of latch onto that and provide some different experiences and different topics for the Graves Lecture Series. So I do want to just take a second to honor and recognize our committee, because we do have a larger committee that has been supporting this 50th anniversary celebration for the last year. So if you are part of our committee, would you please stand to be recognized?
All right, I'm Dr. Don Brammer, and I know a lot of faces in here, but I'm very, very excited to have these two individuals here. I had the opportunity to work with Lyndsi when I was head volleyball coach, and then I had the opportunity to watch Carla tear up things on the basketball court. So I'm very, very excited to introduce Dr. Carla Dowdy and Dr. Lyndsi Slusarski. And they're going to do their own introductions and kind of pace through a little bit of where they've been, where they're going, hopefully. And if you have questions and things at the end, this is a very informal opportunity for you to kind of touch base with some of our own graduates. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I will start. I have to put my old lady readers on. My name's Lyndsi Slusarski. My maiden name was Reed. I grew up on a ranch 60 miles north of Gillette, Wyoming. I went to a little country school, and when I was in 7th grade, there was actually only 13 kids, and my sister and I were the only girls. In 8th grade, my parents bought a house in town so we could go to school and we could start playing sports. My dad played college basketball. I was surrounded by sports all my life, all my youth. I spent my summers working on the ranch, traveling the country playing summer ball. When not on the ranch, I spent most of the time at the Y playing pickup ball with Brady Ladke, if any of you guys remember her. I was fortunate enough to be on 3 state championship teams. Those 3 years were crucial in teaching me teamwork and an understanding of what it meant to play a role. I was challenged physically and mentally in many ways, but I have no doubt that 1994 through 1996 helped me make me the strong woman I am today. I will never forget those fire truck rides back into town in the middle of March after winning a state championship. I knew at a young age I wanted to be in medicine. I attended Chadron State College from 96 to 2000. I majored in human biology and minored in psychology. I'm really thankful for the pre-med program that Chadron offered. I think this is a special place. Particularly working on cadavers, I remember looking at schools and going, wow, this little town in Nebraska actually has cadavers that you can work on in your anatomy lab. So that was really perplexing to me. Let's see. I played intramural basketball. I lived with all the basketball players all through college. So I was just always engulfed in sports. I didn't know if I wanted to go to medical school or PT school. So after I graduated, I started taking graduate classes, and that's when Coach Brammer and Coach Anderson asked if I would help be the grad assistant for the basketball and volleyball teams. So it was awesome because I was taking graduate classes, I was in the gym, surrounded by sports. I started working at the clinic a little bit, so I was getting my feet wet with medicine. It was the best of both worlds. After a year of graduate assisting, I took a full-time position at the Chadron Clinic, working with one of the PAs, physician assistants, and that's what kind of introduced me to what a PA was and what they did. I just think, looking back, that experience for me was invaluable. Working alongside the physicians, the physician assistants, small rural clinic, you get hands-on, you get to do a little bit of everything, and that just fired me up even more for medicine and becoming a PA. Let's see. I now, 20 years later, still a PA. I've been in Durham for almost 20 years. I did 2 years of family practice. Durham for me has been a great work-life balance because I have 3 kids who play multiple sports. So I settled in on where obviously God wanted me to be. I regularly take PA students, medical students. I speak on sun safety to local schools and volunteer for free skin checks. I spend most of my time chasing my kids around. I'm also very involved in coaching. I caught the coaching bug kind of from Coach Brammer, Coach Anderson. It was kind of a whole different perspective of sports, being the coach, not the player, and learning about motivation, budgeting, recruiting, planning, scheduling, all that. I mean, coaches probably make 5 cents an hour for everything they put in, but it's just something ingrained in you, right? You do it because you love it, you love the sport, you love to see people be successful. So I still coach. I coach middle school travel ball. I coach at the STM where my kids go to school in Rapid City. My husband is a high school basketball coach, so we're very involved with coaching.
Thanks. Good afternoon, guys. It's truly an honor to be here, truly. Thank you for having us. Some of my life's most transformative moments and times and things that I reflect on have come within the four corners of this campus. My name is Carla Dowdy. I had the privilege of playing on the Chadron State women's basketball team from 1996 to 2000. Where I met Lyndsi and a few other faces in this crowd, so thank you. I've been a PA for 20 years. Mostly I've practiced in inner city emergency medicine for about 12 years of my career, mainly in Phoenix and then briefly in New York City. And then I made the very subtle move to a rural town in southeast Montana where there are no paved roads and no stoplights. So if you know me, that tracks. Yeah, very subtle. That tracks. I essentially found myself back home. I grew up in rural Wyoming, first half of my life on a ranch, and the second half in the city of a couple thousand people. I played high school sports, all that you could get your hands on, and then was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to play college basketball, which was one of the greatest gifts that I was given. I quickly fell in love with rural medicine, and I'm not sure, I was just talking to a member of the community about practicing in rural medicine. I also worked at Chadron Medical Clinic and sort of fell back in love with rural medicine in Montana. And so the kind of medicine that we get to practice, which is centered in wellness, centered in continuity, I'm super proud of it. I became the chief medical officer. I've moved into administration recently. I became the chief medical officer in our small community access hospital about 3 years ago, where we've been able to highlight some increased service lines, and we've been able to increase revenue and essentially keep the doors open, which I'm super proud of. Lyndsi and I were talking about how to kind of bridge our experience with the Title IX series, and so I just briefly wanted to touch on some points that I thought were important about that and how Title IX has affected the opportunities that we have been afforded based on the efforts of the men and women that obviously came before us and did a great deal of work. I bring up statistics because I think it's important. Lyndsi and I's timeline is a little closer than maybe some of you in this crowd to the fact that Title IX was passed in 1972. We were born in 1977. So in saying that, the first physician graduated in 1723 in the United States. That seems like 1.5 million years ago. It took 126 years later for the first female physician to graduate. PAs, which both of us are, the first one was in 1967, and in 1970, the first female graduated from PA school. She was black, by the way. Can you imagine the obstacles that she had to overcome in order for us to be able to practice what we can and have the honor of serving people. 1943, I'm a chief medical officer, so I think it's important to highlight that in 1943, so first female physician, in the 1800s, 1943 was the first female chief medical officer. Seems a little bit crazy. I became one in 2022, and reflecting on that, I'm just grateful for the steps that we've been able to make. And in 1974, before the woman could get a mortgage without a cosigner, guys, like that's crazy. Because I'm insane, I have a real estate business on the side and I have 5 mortgages. So I think about that and it just seems crazy. I don't know which one's crazier, the fact that I have 5 or that I'm allowed to have 5, but nonetheless, the older that we get, the closer that this timeline seems. We were talking about how long it's been since we've been back on campus and time flies. Your parents and those who are much wiser will tell you that time flies, and it truly does. We're both hopeful that our daughters, I'll say our daughters, our children, will look back on the work that we're doing and not be amazed, because it will be normal, right? Not be floored by the progress that we made, because it's just standard. The opportunities that you have, the opportunities that you're given, the things that you can accomplish when no one tells you that you can't. We hope that the sacrifices that we're making now and those sacrifices that have come before us make this normal.
Yep. So when Dr. Brammer asked us to speak and Carla and I started tossing ideas around, I'm like, what does sports do for women? I know what it's done for me, but like, are there statistics out there? What's the internet say? What's Google say? So I looked some stuff up. I just want to share it. Young girls who are exposed to pressure, deadlines, and competition in youth sports are important to be comfortable with in the professional setting. And I have to say, I think both Carla and I can attest to that with deadlines, pressure of dealing with somebody's life. Heidi, you can attest to that. When you're responsible for somebody's life, obviously there's some pressure. So dealing with that pressure, which is sometimes similar to the pressure that you're facing on the court, right? Or on the field when you're expected to play good or make that last shot. Not only do sports increase overall wellness and happiness, but when girls focus on what their bodies can do physically on the field or court, it matters less what their bodies look like. Sports can create healthier relationships with food and nutrition for the same reason, especially if given the proper education on how to fuel for peak athletic performance. And Carla and I were talking about that on our way down. Like, I have 2 daughters and she has 1, and just being physically active in front of our girls and showing them how strong we are physically and mentally, but like running a marathon, playing pickleball, competing, like showing our daughters that they can do that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that it's just become, almost normal, that there's not anything in between. Yeah. So we kind of wanted to focus on, and Lyndsi, you can start some of the things that we think are qualities that maybe historically have been either overlooked or maybe frowned upon, the things that are qualities in leadership that women possess uniquely, but I think it falls over into transformational leadership across, all fields. So do you want to
we'll start. We kind of bullet pointed like sports and leadership, how it's, the similarities. So what have sports taught us? Hard work. I looked up Kobe Bryant. He's got a lot of awesome quotes, but one is, great things come from hard work and perseverance, no excuses. Most athletes have a drive to succeed, whether it comes innately or it's learned. They learned early on that hard work and long hours pay off, right? I know there's a lot of athletes in the crowd, and like I said, my kids play sports, and I see my son in the gym shooting at 10 o'clock and trying to get 500 shots up a day, and that's when nobody's looking, right? Like, those long hours pay off. As a student athlete in high school and then during my coaching years, it didn't take long to figure out that time management was important. Managing rigorous sports schedules while maintaining good grades, holding down a job, keeping up with life requires discipline, and it doesn't come without sacrifice. I mean, sometimes you have to say, I can't come to the party, I can't go to dinner, I can't come to the lake. Like, I got to get shots up, I got to go to the weight room, I got to get my reps in. So hard work, I think, stands out. And obviously from our jobs, PA school, hard. Like, I thought undergrad was hard. PA school is very hard, and hard work pays off.
And I just think the idea that you're going to outwork someone, even if it doesn't look perfect, or even if it's not what other people think that it should look like, that the work that you're going to put in, you reflect back on previous challenges, right? So undergrad here is not a joke. The pre-med program here is exceptional. I'll say that because I have been through a master's program. I'm currently in a doctorate program, and the pre-med program here is amazing, actually. And so you reflect back on that, and then PA school was intense. There's no doubt. It's intense, but you were able to reflect back on experiences where hard hard work paid off. I have an example of feeling often in undergrad like there wasn't enough time in the day, that I was always behind, like I was doing something wrong, because I would show up. So we would leave, on a road trip on Thursday night, and we wouldn't get back until early Sunday morning, and you have an OChem test on Monday. Well, guess what I came into class looking like? A hot mess. So like sweats, hair in a bun, like scrambling with my notes looking like coffee was spilled all over them, feeling like I was always behind or like I wasn't doing something right. And people around me looked like, seemingly like they had their stuff together, right? They had breakfast before their test. Excuse me? What's happening? So that idea that like you were doing something wrong because you weren't showing up perfectly. And I actually, I tell this story not to throw anyone under the bus, but to say that hard work doesn't often look perfect. It just looks like consistent. I had my academic advisor when I was a senior here. Again, I'm not saying this story outside of just to talk to you about what perseverance looks like. Said, I don't think that you're cut out for medicine. You don't have time management skills. You're not organized enough. We think that you should choose a different career. That was hard to hear 3.5 years into a program. I mean, I was clinging on by my fingernails, but my GPA wasn't terrible. Like I was hanging on. But to hear that was difficult, that someone else's opinion didn't match what you thought that you were able to accomplish, even though it looked messy and hard. So I was teasing. I said, I'm fairly certain in that moment, I can't really remember, but I'm sure that I went home and said, Lyndsi, let's go to the bar. And we're going to like sort this out over some beers and probably say to heck with it and move on. The point I'm trying to make is I didn't listen. And the rest is history, and we're all okay. So hard work doesn't have to look perfect. It just has to look consistent.
Yep. Next one, responsibility. No doubt that both ranch life, which I don't know that it's a coincidence, but we both grew up on a ranch, and sports has taught me the value of being responsible. I think being responsible for somebody other than yourself, whether it's an animal, livestock, or another human being, it makes you put others before yourself, and it really creates a sense of responsibility. I'm always preaching to my kids or the athletes that I coach, accept responsibility for your actions, be accountable, and take ownership of your mistakes. I think taking ownership of your mistakes is huge, especially in a leadership position. If your team knows that they can come to you and you're going to say, you know what, I didn't do that right, that's on me. Or the coach says, look, you guys didn't hustle hard enough, that's on you, but I didn't draw up the right out of bounds play, that's on me. Like accepting your mistakes. I think that's huge. It's a huge responsibility, but it's very respectable characteristic. The valuable lessons carried over into my dermatology practice still. I hold myself accountable to provide the best possible care to patients. We'll always put the patient first and do what's right for them. I think both Carla and I do that, strive to do that every day. You kind of take that medical oath, right? After you graduate, you put your white coat on and you go out into the real world and take care of people. So responsibility is a huge one.
And I think responsibility for your actions is a cornerstone of leadership in the space of you have weaknesses and strengths, your entire team does. And being able to recognize your own, own your own, not that you can't show up and say, I'm going to try to do better, but surrounding yourself with people who can, just like on the court, who can pick up where you're deficient and vice versa, that you can fill in gaps where it's needed, I think is truly remarkable in leadership. And I think it's really important to say, I don't know everything. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I've gotten caught a lot in my career, almost paralyzed by the fear that I didn't know enough, or that I was almost imposter like, that I didn't know enough and I wasn't perfect, and how would I lead people if I didn't know? And the answer to that, remarkably, is you don't have to know. You own that you don't know, and you surround yourself with people that do. And then you lead them just like you would on the court. A million times over on the court, you lead people through really tough times where you didn't see what was on the other side of it, but you were able to do it. So I think the cornerstone for leadership looks like owning your weaknesses and also playing to your strengths and having your team do the same.
Yep. Next one is, I debated doing this, but I talked to Carla and we both agreed, pride. And not bad pride, not boastful, but being proud of who you are, where you came from, your roots, your values, your character. Being proud of, your work ethic, and having integrity. So I told Carla, like, just little things with coaching, because I've coached kindergartners all the way through middle school girls, which is sometimes a huge challenge, and I say a lot of bad words when I'm at practice. Like, anyway, but now it's like nothing fills me with more pride when I see girls that I'm coaching, and if it's just the little things like closing out, locking their elbow, going behind the back, running the play, setting a screen and rolling. When I see the girls do that, it just makes me so full of pride. And I've coached, my girls were on a travel team since they were 5, and now these girls are 7th graders, and they've got moved up to freshmen, and I get to go watch them play. And it just makes me so full of pride to see them out there doing things that we worked on in 4th grade. Also, I see their character, and that's what we really, really worked on. If somebody falls down, if your opponent falls down, you give them a hand, you pull them up. They're being respectful to the refs. They're handling losses with humility, and that just brings me a great deal of pride.
Sure. I think I have a story as well. I recently added a program at our hospital that included paramedicine, and I had some paramedics with a great deal of experience join our small little village. And it's sort of like they have this personality, which I appreciate, having spent the vast majority of my career in emergency medicine. It's kind of like trying to rein in a thoroughbred. But that isn't always, when you have like a person with a wealth of knowledge coming to a small community that has historically not had that, that can often feel very intimidating to people, and it was not well received, which I was like, how is this possible? They're amazing. And what I recognized in leadership is I had failed them in the way that they needed to deliver their message, and the way that we needed to implement this without feeling like previous programs were deficient. How are we going to bring people alongside of us rather than feeling like we're just tearing down a program that they had worked really hard on, as deficient as it was. And so as a leader, I had to really look at it and say, oh boy, like I didn't do a good job of implementing this. I was just so excited to have this program. And so to Lyndsi's point, I've been able to sort of coach in the space that a lot of pre-hospital folks aren't well versed in, which is leadership. And the way that you deliver your message is important. About what you're saying is how you're saying it to people. And we've been able to turn that around and do some really good things. And we've been able to increase our pre-hospital numbers, which then increases our access to patient care by 3-fold. So I say that as a point of not just for me, but for our entire team to see them grow and to see them be able to improve patient outcomes has been remarkable to me.
Yeah. Next one, compassion. I looked up the definition of compassion, and it said to suffer together. I thought, okay, who in this room hasn't suffered? Whether it's divorce, death of a loved one, financial stress, loss of a job. We've all suffered at some point. And I think if you've suffered in any way, you have more compassion. It just kind of goes hand in hand, right? I was pregnant with my second child, and I was 32 weeks. So my son was 3 years old, and I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So obviously one of the scariest times of my life. At one point, my doctor said, you need to get your will in order. We don't know what this looks like. So, I think I was 32 at the time, probably. So here you are, you're this athlete, you're invincible, like strong, and you're told you might lose your life. It was paralyzing. And then to think, I have this child inside of me, and I have a 3-year-old, like they're not gonna have their mom. But the tumor was benign. My daughter spent 3 weeks in the NICU, and I remember I was reading this on the way down here telling Carla, and it just makes me teary because I was in the ICU. So I had a C-section on a Wednesday, and on Friday they rolled me up to the OR, and I had a craniotomy, and they took out part of my skull and my brain tumor, and I was in the ICU that night, and I told my husband, I'm pumping, like I'm getting my baby breast milk. Like, he's like, you're crazy. Like, you have this head wrap on and this wrap on your, like, I said, no, I am breastfeeding. So here I am in the ICU with my breast pump, and I'm like, run my breast milk down there. Like, I was determined. And I have no doubt that my experience being an athlete and just that resilience and that perseverance that I had learned, like, helped me with my recovery. And I got through it. Obviously, it was a very challenging time for my husband and I, and Carla was there.
I brought pizza and milkshakes so you could produce some breast milk.
But I mean, it changed me, and my compassion. I probably wasn't a very compassionate person before that. It certainly taught me compassion and not to judge others and maybe what they're going through, their previous experience. And now you sit down with patients, these old ranchers, and they could sit in the exam room for an hour, and it's like, I have 4 more patients to see, John. I can't sit here and BS with you. But you hear their stories, and it's just like, wow, that's really cool. And like, we've all suffered, and I just think it just really makes you more compassionate.
I think, isn't that the funny thing about life? We were talking about this on the way down, where experience or suffering on the other side of that is a knowing. That often doesn't come soon enough. And so by the time that you have the wisdom, the moments that could have been impactful for you maybe have passed. Isn't that like the human condition, right? We're talking about how do you teach your kids wisdom? Well, my daughter's 5, so I have a minute. But like, how do you teach them? And you give them just enough so that they can experience it themselves. But I think as a medical provider and as a leader, suffering or challenges is no doubt makes you better. It makes you able to connect in a way that is important for your patients. I was talking about, I think, one of the highlights for me that I think women leadership are incredible about, and it goes hand in hand with what Lyndsi was saying, is empathy. Our ability to see people for who they are and meet them there. Creating sort of a community is one of the strengths that we have. And also, seeing when your teammates are struggling and what they need to hear in those moments was invaluable to me, and I learned that here. I wanted to tell a brief story. It is not brain tumor like. It is my 19-year-old self learning a very tough lesson on a basketball court around what empathy looks like from one of my teammates that was older. And being able to reflect on that. And I've thought about it so many times in the way that she gave me grace. And so the story looks like this. I was a freshman, and we were playing in the championship game to move on in the tournament. And it was a close game, and I was playing in it, which was not normal. And I, as a freshman, was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, why am I here in this moment, in these like last 5 or 6 minutes of this very important game? And there was a certain amount of like anxiety and all the things that I had done to that point. It came down to essentially the last play, and we were at their end. They inbounded the ball, and their coach wisely chose to back screen the rookie freshman. That would be me. We didn't review it in film. We had never seen it before, and I missed it, and my teammates missed it, and she scored, and we were done. Oh, that was rough. Everything I had done well in the game was overshadowed by this one moment. And I fully anticipated to go into the locker room, and my teammates, particularly one, it was her senior year, she was done. To just first of all, probably not talk to me again or like call me every name in the book, which I felt like I deserved. And instead, she said, that game was not made on one play. You did a ton of things right. We all missed it, and I don't want you to reflect on it. She showed me grace when I felt like I didn't deserve it, and she was also hurting. I have never forgotten it on how to show up for your people when you're also hurting. I can't tell you how many times that I've lost people. I've lost kids. I've stood in a room after battling for someone's life for an hour and been able to reflect on how do you lift people up when you're also hurting. And as a leader, I think it's one of the most powerful things that you can do is to acknowledge your own pain and still show up for people. So that's, I think, part of what athletics teaches you, is how to show up for people when you're also hurting.
Yep. All right, a few more. Camaraderie, big one for me. I think Carla too. What's camaraderie? Mutual trust and friendship among people who spend a lot of time together. Like, who are your best friends? Usually your teammates, right? I mean, you love them, you hate them. They're like your sisters, like your brothers. Sports is about the people. so much about the people. I mean, we wouldn't be back here if it wasn't for sports.
We met.
Yeah.
We were just talking about it on the way here. Lyndsi and I have known each other since we were probably trying to start it out. Both grew up in Wyoming. We've known each other. I would not call each other friends in high school. We thought that we hated each other. Probably 15 or so we've known each other.
Yeah.
We are not.
We played against each other in high school, and then we came here and met as freshmen, and I was living with Brady, another women's basketball player, and it quickly became, we're going to be friends.
Yeah.
And
then
here
roommates,
we are,
and then
30 years later. We've been to Africa together on a mission trip. We've seen each other through divorces, death of children, loved ones, job changes, moves across the country, brain tumors. And here we are. So awesome. Anyway, camaraderie. Like I can't, my husband, he's big on this. I just think the friendships we have created from our sports journey is just, they're priceless. My husband played at Tech, School Mines, and then went on to play professional basketball in Poland. And he still has super good friends in Poland. Like his best buddy, Damien, he talks to him every 2 weeks. We went back to Poland 6 years ago. We had the biggest party. All his teammates. It's like we have friendships across the world, which is just so cool. It means so much to us. That's why we do this. My son plays on an AU team out of Sioux Falls. We drive to Sioux Falls for practice, by the way, which is a 4.5-hour drive. The friendships we've created across the state of South Dakota, and I have these parents cheering for Barron during the week. Like it's just so cool. It's opened doors. It's created opportunities, and the relationships that it's fostered are just so meaningful. Some of our best friends have come from our sports journey. I guess the other thing too, I told Carla, I work in Rapid City, and I have my Chadron State plaques up in my exam rooms, and so I'm still very honored. I see a lot of patients from Chadron and the surrounding area. So I have, these people that come in and they're sitting in my exam room and they see my Chadron State plaque, and it instantly creates a level of trust. And we have that in common, and it just instantly helps the relationship start off on a good foot. Let's put it that way.
I have some young people. Again, I live in a very small town, and I have some graduates from Chadron State College that have lived there. But my daughter's gymnastics teacher has a daughter that is currently going to school here, and the conversation that is churned up by talking about Chadron State is kind of remarkable. I wasn't from the area. I left for a long time, and I had to come back, or I came back, and now I'm having to yes, I am from this area. Yes, I went to school here. Yes, I'm not like a city person. I just lived there for a short period of time. Anyway, those conversations are so cool because everybody's so excited to talk about it. And, we didn't know you went there, and we didn't know all of these things. So I hear you. Chadron State is a special place, for sure.
2 more. Toughness. I think that's a given. The ability to deal with hardship or to cope in difficult situations. I just think, sports if you're going to play sports, you got to be tough. For most sports, maybe not all of them. Pickleball, maybe not super tough, but I've taken some shots in the face before and it kind of hurt. By the way, if you haven't played pickleball, you should. If you're old like Carla and I and you still want to compete, kind of have that, that desire to compete, but your body doesn't move the way you want it to, pickleball is good for that. Through sports, both playing and coaching and being in medicine, I've learned mental and physical toughness. Injuries are one thing, but the mental struggles, I was just talking to Coach Brammer about it, they're legit, right? And I think, sports is probably 60 to 75% mental, honestly. Getting through those mental blocks and dealing with the pressure and being nervous and just settling in and doing, relying on your training, just having that confidence, I've trained hard for this, I'm going to play my ass off and I know I can do this, right? Having that confidence. So dealing with toughness. I had all these quotes I was telling Carla on the way down because my husband's constantly quoting different basketball coaches. But Kara Lawson, I don't know if you guys have seen her speech on Handle Hard Better. We all wait for life to get easier. It will never get easier. what happens is you handle hard better. And I think now that Carla and I are about ready to round up to 50, it's easy because you guys are all young, but it's like life doesn't get any easier, unfortunately. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be ebbs and flows and mountain peaks and valleys. And so just being tough and handling hard, because it's going to be hard at times.
I think it kind of bridges into what I was saying earlier about I've struggled through my life thinking that everything had to look perfect in order to be great. What I've come to understand is that is the furthest thing from the truth. Finding peace with discomfort, finding comfort in being uncomfortable, whether that's on the court or off, is, I think, one of the keys to not only peace, but also some deal of success in the space where it does not have to look perfect. It just has to look like showing up, keep going. Some days it's going to look great and some days it's going to feel like garbage, and that's okay. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing because you're uncomfortable. I've spent a lot of time feeling like I was doing something wrong or I wasn't enough, or people saying you can't or you shouldn't do whatever you're doing. You shouldn't sit at this table. You're a clinician, stay in your lane. Why do you want to do administration? You're too loud, you're too emotional. We would be here all night if I could keep listing the things that people told me I shouldn't or couldn't or can't. And the point I'm trying to say is that I think we're speaking about resilience, which is that it doesn't have to look perfect. It just has to look like consistent. Show up exactly how you are and say, yep, here I am doing the things that I don't really know how or what. I just know that I'm supposed to be here. There's kind of a deep knowing that comes from I'm going to do this, and it's not going to look pretty, and it's going to be okay. The discomfort is actually where the growth is, and I know that seems sort of kumbaya and like, oh great, you're going to tell me that when I flunked my test. I'm telling you, the growth, the good stuff, is where the heart is. And I've often struggled to say, Lyndsi, remind me of this when my daughter is 16. Because right now, like 5, it's whatever, she skinned her knee. My point in saying it is teaching our children, talking to future generations, future leaders about being uncomfortable and doing it anyway. That's where the growth is. I think teaching kids to be okay when things are not going okay is one of the cornerstones to not only leadership, but to success.
Mm-hmm. And being okay with mistakes and not, we talked about that on the way down, just like, especially with basketball, it's a game of mistakes. And I try to tell the girls that, like, if you know Mike Kaczynski, the coach at Duke, like, what's his theory? Next play, right? If you miss a shot, you travel, you make a mistake, the 2 to 3 seconds it takes you for you to hang your head or get frustrated with yourself, within those 3 seconds, the other team's probably already scored, right? So like, it's a game of mistakes. Move on. Don't dwell over your mistakes, okay? And our last one is leadership, which we've kind of been talking about the whole time, especially with Carla's administrative role, but just being team leaders at our job. You know, we have 7 physicians, 5 PAs. I'm the lead PA. I've been there a long time. I'm kind of like the old woman. A lot of people come to me for advice, and just, I have to be the leader. Like, people are watching what I do, they're watching how I handle things. And leadership can be lonely, and I talked to Carla about that. A lot of people are afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, striking a nerve, so they avoid those hard conversations. And as a good leader won't do that. I mean, they're going to approach it in the right way, that it's respectful. But leadership can be lonely. Good leaders seek to empower their team. They are really good at communication and collaboration. And again, I think that comes from playing sports, right? But I think a big part of leadership is empowering your team. And it's not being a leader, you can't be selfish. You have to bring out the best in your team, so you all look good.
I think also leadership looks like being a bit of a visionary, and I say that not to be vague, but to say it's okay to challenge. This is the way we've always done it. I think a lot of times approaching it outside of the status quo and being creative and allowing your team to be creative in approaching it. Sometimes you can take pride in something that you've built and your team says, I don't think that's the way that it should do. It can feel a little like you've done something wrong or like they're attacking you, but I would encourage you to approach it as challenging something often is going to bring out the most transformation across the board, and saying, this is how we've always done it doesn't make it the right way to do it. And so allowing people to be, creating a space where people can speak freely is important. So being approachable is important, but also I think sometimes it's less about what you say and how you say it and how you deliver the message, allowing it to be a space for people to bring the best of themselves to you versus being afraid to say something for fear that you're gonna take offense to it, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah. I think just to wrap things up too, we obviously, there's a lot of athletes in the room, and you just, we want to compete and you want to win. And I think, competing in the workforce, competing for a leadership role, for a spot on the team, like that ability to compete, some people have it, some people don't. And I told Carla, you can't coach a kid into wanting to compete. They have to want it. It has to come within themselves. But the longer I coach and the more my kids get older and watching them sitting in the stands, it's like, what is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of sports? And I think it's all the things we just talked about. But I think these things that sports teaches you, ultimately, we have to keep things in perspective. And I want to raise and coach good human beings, kind and respectful people, right? That's what matters. Like successful individuals. And these are bullet points we just talked about, I think are the most important tools that sports teaches you, and that you will carry through into your career.
Sure. I think we'll just wrap it up by saying that it's not coincidence that many women leaders are former athletes. Sports teaches us how to lead with strength and compassion, how to balance ambition and humility, and how to use our unique strengths to make a difference no matter what arena that we're in. I encourage all of us to continue advocating for opportunities that empower women and girls, perhaps extending that to all marginalized folks. For the women here today, I would urge you to embrace the qualities that make you exceptional, even if they're not what people around you tell you that they are. Lean into your empathy and collaboration and vision, and by all means, your resilience. These are qualities that will shape the future, and we'll be waiting for you. We're here. We'll be waiting for you to join us to help us forge the path forward for our future generations, our children, our children's children. So again, I can tell you that, so we can tell our future generations, when I was your age, and they'll look at us like, what? It's no big deal. Here we are. Thank you so much for having us, and we'd also like to thank Chadron State for giving us the foundation to succeed, and thank you for the pioneers of Title IX for paving the way for women like us. Let's continue to do the hard work and to sacrifice so that our next generation can reap the rewards. We're just getting started. Thanks.
For this last part, if anybody has questions, it's open for question time.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
Anything, ask anything.
Informal, anything goes.
Please don't not say anything. So at least ask one question. Go ahead.
You guys talked about a lot of struggles that you've been through, but what are some of your favorite memories, specifically in college?
Oh, good Lord. Well, we were just talking and teasing that we're super, super glad that cell phones didn't exist when we were here.
Or social media.
There's no documentation of
We didn't have
anything.
social media. That's how old we are.
They're like, excuse us? What is happening? Favorite memories. Well, just sitting in this crowd, I haven't seen some of these folks for probably 2 decades, and it feels like yesterday. Chadron State is a special place in that it's the experience that I had as an athlete and as a student are remarkable, but the friendships that I forged, it's small enough, it's it's unique enough that I've created friendships that have lasted, decades. And so some of my favorite memories are obviously road trips for sports. We used to pack into a Suburban, you guys still might, really where it's like, vans. Yeah, of course. There's, no room anywhere. And so you're in close quarters. And those are some of the greatest memories, as well as well, I talked to you about showing up to campus looking like a hot wreck. Those memories of like showing up messy and still showing up and being able to accomplish it, I've reflected on it a lot. I remember showing up to PA school, which I think is one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But I'm gonna tell you, when I said, all I have to do is show up to class and take tests. I don't have to like go on a road trip and like come back and struggle. Like all I have to do is just focus on school for 2 years. My point in saying that is that I was able to reflect back on the challenges as a student athlete and how I overcame those to get through graduate school. And I'm like, I can do this. I've been here. I've done harder than this. Yeah. What do you think?
I remember the cadaver lab. Isn't that funny?
That is cool.
I just,
that was remarkable.
I lived in the math and science building, which is this, I guess, which is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
But it was not this beautiful when we were here.
It was our home. It just wasn't as pretty.
I had to take economics and go in that other building across campus, and it felt like I was going across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I mean, I remember Dr. Drucker, bless his heart, Dr. Lawson, Dr. Cox, Joyce Hardy, who I know is still here. Yeah, that and just the family feel. Like, it's big enough that you don't know everybody, but it's small enough that you recognize most everybody's face. Mm-hmm. And I think that and just the sports community and the support from the community, and that was a big memory for me. Yeah. Anything else?
Other questions?
Do we have any of the women's basketball players here? Oh, yeah, we know
We're going to go visit with them afterward, I think. Yeah.
Specifically for Carla.
Sure.
Do you think you would have come to Chadron State without the basketball scholarship made available by Title IX?
Wow, that's a great question. Man. So I'm thinking back to my wise 18-year-old self making a decision about where I was going to go to school and basing it upon scholarship for basketball. So I had a couple of different opportunities to play elsewhere. If I'm being honest, I chose this for proximity to my family so that they could show up for me. That was important to them. I also think that there was a little bit of guidance from something bigger than me in the space of the education and the friendships that I forged here. Do I think that I would have come to Chadron? I would have went somewhere based on the ability for Title IX scholarships. I am 100% grateful that I came here. I would not have chosen a different route, even if, I had even if I would have had an opportunity for a bigger school. This is where I needed to be. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I came here, actually, I was graduated from Gillette, Wyoming, and all my friends went to Laramie, but Chadron back then offered in-state tuition if your GPA was high enough coming out of high school. So I chose it because it was closer and it was the same cost, and I knew they had a good pre-med program.
Yep. So to answer your question, I think I would like to honor the fact that I was given money based on the pioneers that came before me, and that it helped pay for my undergrad. It's actually remarkable. I'm very grateful. Yeah, of course.
Working in medicine, that's a predominantly male-dominated, historically male-dominated field, and women leaders typically have been called many different things.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? But just, that assertiveness as a leader, like how have you been able to overcome, those names, or like those, you might have men who come into your hospital and they're like, you're a woman, like I can't trust you, right? It's just that negative history that has happened. So how have you guys been able to deal with that if you've had to?
I'll let you start. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, she probably has more than I, because she's had, I think in the ER, more male dominant probably, and just her line of work. I have 7 physicians, 3 are males. But and they've all been very respectful, but I've ran into when I have to send a patient to the hospital, you know, the male physician gets on and he's just like, who are you? What's your name? Like,
I think it's important for you to talk about the challenges not only in our line of work, which is that we're female, and we were giggling. We said young, and then we're like, wait, that was like 10 years ago maybe, or seemingly young. And then also we're advanced practice providers, so we're not physicians. So it's kind of an interesting scenario. We don't need to get into the super big dynamics of like physician versus APP, but I think it's important for you to touch on that, and then I can speak to how I've overcome
like I
it.
told Carla, sometimes I feel like before I even go in a room, especially sometimes with challenging patients who've had bad experiences with other providers, or
Where's a challenging case in general?
probably a type A alpha female like myself. Walking in the room, I already have 3 strikes against me. I'm a female, I'm not a male. I'm younger, although I'm not. And I'm a PA, I don't have MD behind my name. So I have 3 strikes against me. So I have to work real hard to prove myself to that individual sometimes. But I kind of like it. It's a challenge because it's like, no, I'll prove myself. I'll get to the point here. And I'm also not proud enough to say, I don't know the answer. But I will find out the answer, and I will pull in my partners, and I'll ask for help, and we will get you figured out, and I'm here to help you and get you an answer. But yes, it definitely can be challenging.
I think for me, I've spent 2/3 of my career in the emergency department surrounded by different religion, and also a primarily male-dominated field. Certainly a very ego-driven. ER medicine is like cowboy, wild, wild west kind of stuff. And so I spent a fair bit of time in that space, and then moving to rural medicine, I came into a practice with another provider who had been there for 17 years. So there was that. Rural communities, it's a double-edged sword for how they're going to approach female. And then now as an administrator, so to answer your question, I keep saying this, and it sounds stupidly simple. I kept showing up. I kept demanding that there be a seat at the table for us as APPs, and that we were represented. I learned to be uncomfortable. Like I wasn't doing anything wrong because people were providing resistance. I was telling Lyndsi a story about the boss who actually hired me on at the emergency medicine practice that I was at for 12 years. He and I had a really hard conversation around bonus structure. Money is always the thing that's going to get people a little uncomfortable. So we're having a conversation around bonus structure. When I found out that the physicians were getting bonused and we were getting a $25 gift card for Christmas. So it's one example. And we got into a heated conversation around it, and he took it very personally that I would challenge it. This is the way it's always been, and we're going to continue to do it this way. And called me some names, which is super interesting. And I sort of recognized in that moment that I was challenging like a fundamental belief of his that he was doing right. And I recognized that I disagreed with him, and it was okay for me to disagree with him. It was also okay for us to be uncomfortable. And so we talked about, not taking it personally, and we moved on, and we laugh about it now. He's like a decent friend of mine, but it took me getting comfortable, being really uncomfortable. A lot. And so now as an administrator, I get told all the time that my communication style is too emotional. I get called emotional a lot. And I've recognized it rather than saying yes and thinking I need to do something with that. I take the criticism, I analyze it and say, okay, I could have probably approached that a little bit differently, because I've talked about how as a clinician, I communicate much differently, especially as an ER clinician. I speak much differently than the vast majority of people here. I've recognized that I need to communicate in a way that people can hear, and perhaps that's a space that I can improve on, and I let the rest of the criticism go. am me. I have skills, I have strengths, and I have weaknesses, but I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep doing the things that I genuinely believe in. That is the only way that I know how to teach my team, how to teach my daughter to keep showing up. It does not have to look perfect. I've got stuck in that for a long time, that it needed to look perfect and I needed to know more before I could show up. And that's absolutely not true. So I show up really uncomfortable, not knowing a lot, but knowing that I do have some strengths and some things to bring. So,
I think she's stubborn. That's what she's trying to say.
well, joke's on me, because I have a 5-year-old who is the same. So, joke's on me.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. Thank you. Anything else?
I don't know. I will say that I graduated with these ladies, and one of the things I might add is make sure you keep an open mind if you're not sure exactly which direction you want to go in medicine or what have you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I can remember when Lyndsi was in PA school, I lived in Rapid City, and she was coming to Rapid City to do her dermatology rotation, and it was her least favorite, and she just wanted to get it over with, and knew she would never go into dermatology, but she had to do it.
And that's so
And
funny.
Lyndsi lived with us while she
Yeah.
did her rotation,
Yeah.
and sure enough, she met a boy,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
ended up in Rapid City and is in dermatology.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I know.
really good. That's really good.
God has a plan.
Yeah.
A great referral if you guys need Botox. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Have any spots, any rashes?
Any other questions?
Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, you guys. Thanks so much. Super honored. Thank you.